Well, hello you. I'm glad to see that you're back. This is Shane with Shane's Books and Review, and today we're going to be talking about Red Planet Blues from Robert J. Sawyer. This is kind of a different book, and it is very interesting to me for a couple of different reasons. The story starts out, of course, on Mars in Alex Lomax's office. And Alexander is the only private detective on Mars. They live in a bubble. They have a small dome that they stay within. He's, of course, just the typical, noir type of a character. I felt like it was really gritty. I felt like he would have been sitting in a room that was like dust mites flowing through the air, that kind of a thing whenever I was reading it. These kinds of things weren't descriptions in the book, by the way, and there really wasn't a whole lot of descriptiveness in the book, and the book was actually maybe a little bit on the shallow side in some regards, but on the other side of it, what I got from it was a lot more than I think what was intended. He's there in his office and he has an appointment because, as he points out later in the book, a lot of people that are private detectives that stay in their office had been shot before, so he likes to get out and about quite a bit. The person he's meeting up with is one Cassandra Wilkinson. Now, Wilkinson had just recently transferred from being a human into a robot. So they had, at this point in time, figured out how to transfer the human consciousness into a computerized body. And the body, of course, is supposed to almost be indefinite. It should be able to live forever. There's this problem. Her husband that transferred on the same day that she did is missing. He has to figure out what happened. Finally, Alex catches himself a break. And whenever he catches the break, he ends up finding in the basement of the New You franchise that Cassandra and Joshua ran, Joshua's body with a death note saying, I'm so sorry, this is not the same. And apparently he used a electric jackhammer on his own forehead. Way to put yourself out, man. But anyhow, one of the main reasons why this book stood out to me versus other sci-fi is that whenever people like to speak about the future, all of humanity's troubles are solved, and it's absolutely wondrous. It's utopian in that nobody has any wants or needs. The only problems is how do we save humanity from extinction? Or, we've all come together and now we have this one adversary, which is blah. In this one, we find Alex going into bars where there are strippers there, and one of them he dates on and off and is actually in a quite non-monogamous relationship with. The other characters that he runs into, like artifact sellers, etc., they're kind of realistic. There's this dude that's huge, absolutely huge, that he has a lot of problems getting around. So he's got a hover chair he gets on whenever he's inside the dome, and he's got his own plane. The starting story of the book is where Alexander has to figure out what happened with Cassandra's husband. Of course he does. And whenever he does, this opens up a whole nother story arc inside of the book, which I really enjoyed. At that point, whenever I was at the book, I was like, there's so many more pages left, and this story is pretty well done. Clever author. Clever author. And the story arc transfer has to do, with transfers themselves. Alex goes investigating to talk to different people to figure out what happened with Cassandra's husband. There was only so many things that had happened on that day that would allow for somebody to be a suspect, being that one, they had to be transferred on that day. Two, Alex got a list. He got the information that he needed, and he goes to investigate. And whenever he goes to investigate, he goes to a few different people that had been transferred that were mailed that day. And he really didn't find the things that he was looking for. Instead, he meets one guy that immediately gets dismissed because he passes the screwdriver test. He ends up meeting up with his archaeologist. It feels like he's kind of responsible for Cassandra's husband. But he's also Alexander's main suspect. He's actually a really decent person, and he really doesn't care about so much making money, which seems to be the driving force on Mars, is finding these artifacts. And these artifacts have to do with whenever life was on Mars in the story. If you find specific ones, of course, they're going to be worth more money. And if they're reserved, they're going to be worth a whole lot of money. It is mentioned that their society, now they're able to pretty well reproduce anything that they need. So they can make gold. They can make whatever they want. The archaeologist was just wanting to help find Joshua, which was Cassandra's missing husband. Now, who is this elusive archaeologist? Well, it's Roy Pickover. That's his name. My idea of Roy changed throughout the book. Originally, I thought he was just kind of like a blundering guy, right? Like he stumbled across something, but he's more of a philanthropist. He he only really cares about furthering the knowledge of humanity and preserving these things and giving it back to planet Earth. Whereas there are other characters in the book, quite frankly, that want to only make money. They want to find this thing called the Alpha Site, which Roy Pickover has found, and it's very neat how he found this thing. He was a transfer as well. It was actually him that was kind of the tie between story A and then the rest of the story. So not only do we have the conclusion, Alexander is kind of stuck, right? Instead of his case being solved and then his typical payout, which he admits is pretty well pittance, just enough to keep things going, he is behind on his life tax. He's behind on his bar tabs. It is indeed Pickover that assigns Alexander a task. He wants him to find out what happened to the original artifacts. And the reason why, it has nothing to do with him being Roy, making any kind of money, lining his pockets, or anything to that degree whatsoever. Instead, what it really has to do with is Roy wants to get a hold of those original artifacts so he can document them for science. So that just adds to his character. He's a very proper English gentleman in some ways. In others, he's a prospector, so he's not afraid to get, down and dirty. Now we're getting towards the end of the book, right? And I'm not going to give away the ending because really I wanted to encourage you guys to read it. There's a lot of little things that happen, and those little things are what makes that story really good. Between the big guy, Gargantuan, I think is what Alex called him, a book writer that was there, and his own on again, off again relationship with Diana, Roy, and Mac, the detective that actually works with the police force, everything going the way that it did, there's a end solution where things wrap up. That part of the book I actually kind of had a problem with. And the whole reason why I had a problem with it, although I think it was the proper ending, I want to be clear about that. I really think that was the right ending for that book. I think that it was good. I think it was done proper for those characters and the situations. Alexander would have stood up more for Roy. I really think that's what he would have done. If you think that Alexander would have stuck up for Roy and that would have been a little bit more realistic to the story, hit the like. If, however, you think that I'm absolutely off point on that and that it's not really something that he would have done, hit the thumbs down. This way I'll know what you guys think and I'll have a different way of looking at it, which would be awesome. There's one last thing I would like to say about this book. Beyond is a human still a human if they get transferred into something else? Alex and his quirky interactions with a computer on a ship. His own personal development, the interactions with other characters. I felt like this was a really clever book. And it wasn't clever for the obvious reasons. Well, not to me anyway. So today's book was Red Planet Blues. I hope that you enjoyed it half as much as I did. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Since we're changing the formatting, I would love to have feedback from you guys. Let me know what you think about it as well if you like. I would enjoy that immensely. And with all that said, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you in the next video.